This episode of Shootin The Shiznit is brought to you by WeHaveMerch.com. WeHaveMerch.com. Standard size shirts at only $12.99. Shirts include I'm a Shiznitter, my old buddy, Cool Kids Countdown logo, Shootin The Shiznit logo, Happy Shiznit Day, and many more. Order your shirt today at WeHaveMerch.com.
Have you listened to episode 85? It features Matt Farmer. I have all the archives at www.stspod.club. Check them out. Here's a clip.
I did take a look at some stuff. The Suicide Kings. Now, first of all, who trained you, Matt? How did you get trained? And
I was trained by this guy by the name of Tommy Justice, and it was one of those situations where Tommy Justice used to work for Al Tomko in Vancouver, British Columbia. He also worked for some other promotions and territories. Like, he worked out in Hawaii for Leah Maivia. He was one of those guys that was on the fringe of the business. He'd worked the road, worked the territories, worked a few territories, but he never made it. He was always like a undercard guy. So when he trained me and my partner, we learned just the bare minimum basics, and most of the time when we were training, we weren't even training inside of a ring. We were training on wrestling mats. That's how I got into the business, pretty much, is just learning a little bit, enough to get you in the ring. And then from there, you learn kind of by osmosis.
I love that. Osmosis on. I seen some, man, and I would tell you, but you seem to be a decent bumper. You knew exactly, the old saying, you knew how to fall, but
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's start the party.
Baby, it's only $9.99 right here. And let me tell you how funky like that monkey is. It's some good shiznit.
No, Dusty. The shirts are $12.99, not $9.99. This is kind of like a flashback episode, recorded in actually 2015. Kind of some fun stuff as we talk about Daniel Bryan and John Cena, and also a lot about Rasslin Riot. I've done a couple of these episodes. I just thought y'all guys, this was a podcast appearance on Tuesday Night Neckbreaker that I did. And we had some problems getting our guest lined up for this week. So what I've done is just do this flashback episode. You probably have never heard this, so have fun, and we'll be here, same bad time, same bad channel, for the best little wrestling podcast in the business. That's next week when we love my mama, and you will be there.
We have with us Mr. Brian Tramel.
Hey,
Brian,
Mike,
you
can you
there?
hear me?
I can hear you well.
Good deal.
Good to have you
Glad
with
to be
us,
here,
my
man.
I just want to start out, I used to subscribe to your bulletin, the Rasslin Riot, back in the day, back in the early 90s. It was fantastic. I mean, this was back in the day where, newsletters were running rapid. And I think I subscribed to just about everything and anything, but the Rasslin Riot was, always one of, the most entertaining, sheets that I read.
Yeah, what we did was I actually with the Wrestling Observer, and then we had Wade Keller come out with the Pro Wrestling Torch, and those were the two big names. And at the time, and I felt like I had to do something totally different, and we did. I mean, if anyone's listening that was actually a subscriber at the time, we had. If not, then I'll describe it. You could fit it in your pocket. That was the fun part about it. It was kind of an inside joke with, number one, I was real cheap, and I wanted to send it out with like 36 pages, but I didn't use 36. I mean, we scaled it down so you could just barely read it because it was kind of a joke on the Observer. I don't think the Observer's ever changed a font or anything in all these years it's been out.
Right.
And we kind of like made the print even smaller than Observer, so you kind of had to have a magnifying glass sometimes to read it. But then we tried to do a lot of comedy. We did a couple of really real inside pieces that people at that time in the 90s would have looked at it and said, how'd these guys find? I had some guy that hung around Flair and Hogan and a bunch of guys, and we put in. The weird thing is we only had like 300 subscribers. I mean, that's the only number I ever had. But if you go back and look at my subscriber list, I'm not going to tell any of the names, but if you look at them, there's not all of them, but there is so many of the names that I see on WWE, TNA now, or they've been back in they're backstage and they're part of the scene and everything. But it was I kind of wish I would have saved the checks now because there were some pretty big names that subscribed to the sheet. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, and that was like the cool thing, like you said, it was like such a pocket-sized version of a sheet. And I guess that was my only pet peeve. It was like so goddamn hard to read, but I managed.
Yeah.
And the one, and you have like these little drawings as along with like the articles, and the one that like stood out, I think you had like the Ultimate Roider, and wasn't he holding like a needle or something?
Yeah, the covers were really crazy. I had a guy from somewhere in Tennessee. I've even tried to look him up on Facebook, and I can't find the guy. But he was an excellent artist, and when we started out, I would come up with just, Terry Funk, let's put Terry Funk on the front, or let's put the Steiners on the front, let's do this, kind of thing. But then I came up with, everyone called him the Ultimate Roider back then, and he had, instead of holding up the belt, like he was holding up the belt as he did, he was holding up the hypodermic needle. And then we had a Hulk, we had a Hulk Sucks front cover, too, where it said Hulk Rules, and it was marked out. And the cool thing is that I went and got T-shirts made of those two and offered them to the subscribers. There was only like 12 printed of each one of those. We'd probably be in jail now for doing something like that, but there was 12 printed. And one of the stories I got, that one of the Hulk Sucks shirts is somewhere, and it's got Ric Flair's signature on it, which is really cool. And then I met, back in the day when, after the Bulletin was gone and everything, I had met Mick Foley in Jonesboro, Arkansas. He was working for Burt Prentice there. And I had met Foley, and he introduced me. The guy that introduced me said, "Hey, this is Brian Tramel." And he goes, "Man, you made the Ultimate Roider T-shirt." And I'm like, "Oh, my God, I'm over. I'm over now, So I was really surprised that, there's my claim to fame. There was a lot of inside people that were part of the deal. And it was because we all were, there's some of my friends. There's a guy from Philadelphia. Me and him has been buddies forever. His name's Tom Robinson, and we talk about, we both made paths different ways, but it's really funny about all the people that was around us, and he's been around tons of guys, and that they all become stars or announcers or whatever. They were our friends, and we didn't look at them like that. We just looked at them. They were part of the group, and we were. Where everybody's smart now. Everybody is smart. And I listened to Jim Cornette's podcast a couple of weeks back, and he was talking about back in the day, that you didn't have smart people, and it was so true. There was, I went to the matches in Memphis area, which was also one of our little things. I did I actually did a ringside report, and I rated the ring rats. I don't know if you remember that, but we actually did that. We ranked the ring rats that were there for the wrestlers. So, but we Cornette talked about this. He said, and it's true. I was maybe in this area. I was maybe, the only person that wasn't in the business that actually was friends with some of the wrestlers, but understood the business, kind of thing. I was smart to it, and there was not a lot of guys that were like that. It was hard to find people like that back in the day.
I don't remember that, but that's such a cool idea, as far as because no one really touches upon or really talks too much about ring rats, and it's very much an interesting subject. But I like the fact that you did the whole rating system on ring rats. So pretty cool.
Yeah, we kind of got. I was really being an ass back then because I was, I don't know. I thought, well, the thing about it was I was a guy from your area, Joe Goodhart. You remember Joe Goodhart and Carmella Panfield.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if those names mean anything to you. They probably do. They did a wrestling radio show, right? And and I called in every Saturday or when they had their little. This is way before podcasts. This is real radio, and I called in and gave the Memphis reports. And then between that, doing that, and right before that, I had actually met Lawler, and that's how I become friends with all the guys there. But then, so when I started doing the kayfabe sheet, that's what it was. Then I had to criticize them and all that kind of crap. So they kind of, for 18 months we did the bulletin, and by the end of it we had, I had Lawler pissed at me and had half the, business pissed at me. People calling me, telling me I couldn't sell bootleg videotapes, and, huge companies calling me and telling me, hey, if you don't do that, we're going to quit doing that. We're going to sue you, kind of thing. And it's funny because I keep thinking of this. There's 300 people that subscribe to it, but I don't know. Maybe it's just 300 people that were so inside that I get a call from one of the big two companies, and he identifies himself, and I'm like, okay. And I don't know the guy's name, but he works in the office, and he says, look, if you keep putting those videotapes in your bulletin and selling them, we're going to sue you. And I'm young. I'm 19, 20 years old. It scared the shit out of me, And and then I sat back and we actually come up with a character that was a preacher in the bulletin, and he gave away. The preacher did. He gave away videotapes for donations. So I quit.
Oh.
I quit selling. I quit selling tapes. And so, and we took donations from the preacher, and the preacher would give away wrestling videos.
Now that you mention it, I totally remember that, and I thought it was the coolest idea, and it was like, it actually inspired me. It's like, man, this guy, is getting around the system by asking for donations. Oh man, what a cool idea, And, it's funny, because, back in the day, I was, the same age, I was, 19, 20 years old or whatever. I remember, inspired by, your newsletter and a ton of other ones. Me and my friends, we jumped on the bandwagon. We tried to kickstart two different newsletters. One was a typewritten one. It was before I had a computer, so I did the entire thing on a typewriter, because, that's what I had.
I used a Commodore 64. I just want to tell you that on one of the sheets I worked with. And that was a word processor. I was uptown on that. So
you were uptown, man. My sheet was called the Shooting Star Press, and I think I got 3 subscribers, so we folded shortly thereafter. And then I also got Jeff Osborne's cassette wrestling news, which I completely love. And so then
he was.
we
see,
ripped
that's
that
the thing
off.
about it. I hate to interrupt you, but I want to put Jeff over before he comes on here. Jeff was the pioneer of podcasts, wrestling podcasts.
Certainly.
He actually had the first ever podcast. No one ever knew what that was, but it was a cassette, and you got a cassette in the mail, and just awesome idea. I wish, after he got going with it, I was like, man, hell, I wish I would have thought about this. One of my, there's.
You there? Well, I think I might have just lost Rasslin Riot's own Brian Tramel, so bear with me a second and see if I can get him back. Some technical difficulties.
Attention sports fans, collectors, hobbyists, and autograph seekers. Are you looking for the best in sports cards and collectibles?
80s Tees is the leading online retailer of officially licensed t-shirts, specializing in retro movie, music, TV show, video games, comic book, and cartoon t-shirts. 80s Tees has you covered. They have everything from G.I. Joe, Seinfeld, and Back to the Future, as well as 152 different classic wrestling shirts. Plus, free shipping on all orders over $50. Visit them now at our link, tinyurl.com/STS80stees. That's tinyurl.com/STS80STEES. Visiting them at our link will cost you nothing extra, but it will help support this podcast. Now, back to the show.
Hey, Brian, I think I lost you there.
Hey, I'm back. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, no. All right. So back where we left off, Jeff Osborne, and definitely a pioneer of the podcast. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it was, and there's and if you go back, there's so many things that happen on the podcast. There's a famous, and it's so hilarious, but there's a famous interview. Me and Lawler got into it. I had mentioned that I was hated by the time I quit my newsletter, and me and Lawler got into it, and then Lawler did almost a shoot interview, but it was more like he was doing a promo, just doing a wrestling promo. I wished I still had it, but if you go back and listen to it, it's if you were smart to the business, you would understand, and it got me subscribers, it got me over. It was like, oh, Lawler hates him, let's support, Brian Tramel kind of thing. People not really understanding that helped me tons get subscribers and everything. But it was not the path I probably should have took. I could have probably helped with Memphis Wrestling or something after hindsight's 20/20. But Osborne was, awesome with that cassette wrestling news. There was Pro Wrestling Sushi. I don't know if you remember that. That was really a fanzine that I enjoyed. But Meltzer was the man when it came to the wrestling news.
The
he
Bible,
set an example.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he set an example of being professional and not being biased. And later on, and I don't know if you know this, but I did a website. We stopped doing it almost 3 years ago, almost going on 4 years ago, and it was Rasslin Riot Online, and all it did was it dealt with the Memphis area. And
yeah, I think I actually seen the website. But I'm just curious, the actual the bulletin. How long did that run?
We ran for 18 months.
Okay.
So that wasn't a long time, It's all the stuff that happened.
Not a long time.
No, not at all.
It stood the test of time. It did.
It did. I've seen some of the stuff, that we did, and I actually got a box of stuff. About 3 years ago, I did a move. And when I did the move, I have a box of the issues, in normal size print, and I've threatened to actually put them together and try to put them in a book or something because it's so easy to publish stuff now. So I've really thought about doing that. But
you should.
It's fun. I mean, some of the stuff, like I said, if you read it now, you'll think, why did they put that in there, or what the hell were they thinking? And you know, I know this sounds crazy, but this is, Rob Feinstein and RF Video kind of not stole, but took, what we were doing when it came to bootlegging videotapes and started his own little business, and then went to doing shoots and stuff. So we've had discussions about it, not to Rob actually, but talking about how he took what everyone was doing when, there was tons of people selling videotapes or trading videotapes, but he actually took that and with a business model and changed it around a little bit, and now, I don't know how much the kid makes, but I guess he's not a kid anymore, but
yeah, he makes a pretty penny, no doubt.
No doubt at all. I mean, he gets all the shoots and everything like that. So he took a business like that was considered bootleg, or and it was underground too. That's the thing. When you did your bulletin and we did our bulletin, it was underground, and people that go to the internet, and everyone's smart now. Which I'm not one of those old timers that say I liked it better when everybody wasn't smart. I actually try to evolve as a wrestling fan. I'm not a big fan of, it's just crazy. I've been watching WWE religiously again for like 3.5, 4 years, and stick right with them and watch them and criticize them or like them, not like them, kind of thing. But they're the promotion in the United States right now, the promotion, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not following them, you're not following the wrestling business. But and I told you I wanted to talk about that, and it took me only 11 years to discover a promotion in California. Apparently, they've been going for 11 years, and somebody sent me a note. One of my friends sent me a note. I don't subscribe to Observer right now, but he sent me a note and said, "Hey, Meltzer just put over PWG like crazy in the last Observer." He goes, "These guys in California," and I'm like, "Okay." So I start watching. I had a friend of mine send me some DVDs, and I said, "Let me check these guys out." And I'm like a big mark. I'm like the biggest mark right now. I feel like I've just discovered wrestling again. So I spent last week watching PWG, and tried to watch the build for Mania last night, and just spent more time fast forwarding through everything. It's like no talk, all wrestling, and then the WWE's all talk and no wrestling kind of thing. And it's not even... Right. Yeah, you can watch one of the PWG shows. I still am old school when it comes to giving stars to matches. I do that. I've always done that since Meltzer done it. And you can sit, and I don't even want to put stars to matches because all the matches are so good, you're like, what am I doing? I get tired. It's like, at the fourth match, I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to have to take a break and come back and watch these other two main events kind of thing. And you get to see matches independent-wise, you wouldn't see anywhere else. And I don't know. Like I said, it took me 11 years to finally discover these guys. And if someone's listening to this podcast and never has watched PWG, I say go buy you a DVD on their website, and you'll want to buy you a T-shirt too after you get done.
Well, I've heard some good stuff. I have heard some good stuff about Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, PWG, but I personally haven't really watched any, and I probably should get like a DVD of it or something. But I mean, just tell me, as a fan, like what what are they doing?
Well, what's going on is what's going on is you got a building that seats at the most 400, okay, and you've got everyone. Looks like the front row. Everybody's got these big, huge pitchers of beer, so everyone's drinking, and then you've got this crowd. Is like when you go to wrestling and it's like the most awesomest crowd ever, and you go, man, the matches. Everybody was into every match and had such a great time. Well, I put this show on on my big screen, sitting in the living room, and I catch myself wanting to chant with the guys and act like a big mark is what I'm doing. And it's because the work rate and the stuff that they do, it reminds you of if you have ever watched New Japan or any of the Japanese stuff back in the day, and now too, it reminded me of a huge, the work rate was at that rate, plus you're able to sit there and understand what they're saying. But it's all these people that some of them you've seen before, like Roderick Strong, if you watch anything like Ring of Honor. And I've looked back on some of their older tapes, and they've had Brian, Daniel Bryan there, and all kinds of people. So the thing about it is, it's just what I tell you what. If someone, and I don't work for the promotion, but it's $20-something for a DVD. Okay. You can even go on High Spots, and I've ordered maybe one thing on highspots.com, but you can get a deal where you order, 4 or 5 DVDs. It's not a lot of money, but you're supporting, especially if you go directly to ProWrestlingGuerrilla.com, you're supporting a small promotion, an indie promotion, which if you sit down and figure their gates, it might scare you because they have front row at $65. Here's my business background coming. So I always look at stuff like this, but they have front row $65. Everything else is $45, and and they sell out. They sold out in 5 minutes from the time the last show was over with. So take a calculator, do the math, and you'll see what their gates are. And and they have. I recommend it. Anyone else listening to it, I don't usually, and I'm glad I don't know anyone. I don't know none of the guys that work for them, so it makes it easy for me to say, hey, it's a good promotion. It's fun to watch. That's a good thing. That's the one thing for me is I get, I managed in the wrestling business for about 5 years in this area. I've had friends, that stayed at my house that are wrestlers. Blah blah blah. But never really in the business kind of thing, just around it so much. But it's fun to actually find something that excites me enough to feel like a fan again. So
definitely,
I know I'm doing a segue here, but speaking of, I did talk about the WWE. I don't mean to take over as the host. Hey, this is Brian Tramel, the host of no.
Anything you want to talk about, we're right there with you, man.
Are you saying I'm an easy interview? Look, I can't shut up. So, but we were just talking about. I said something about WWE, and I'm not that guy that says, I hate the way the new style has changed, and I hate WWE all the time. But Mania this year is not. And I see this everywhere, and I see this almost every year, and no one's going to, remember this, but they'll say, oh, this Mania don't look, But there's always a big match, 2 or 3 big matches that you really, really want to see. And last year was, Daniel Bryan, and you knew what was going to happen, but you really wanted to see it. And but I don't know if we're going to have one of those, after last year with Taker losing, which, by the way, I wished I would have been a betting man that day because 2 hours before the show started, I actually told my wife that Taker's losing today, and it was the weirdest thing. And when he lost, we were just like, I was shocked too, but still, I would have bet money then. Right. But I don't feel this year's Mania has a ladder match, and you don't. A lot of the fans, my friends I talk to are not big Roman Reigns fans, but I actually like Roman. I like his. He's limited in the ring, very limited. I think they haven't pushed him the way they should have. When he came back from being injured, he should be doing. He should have had jobbers in there and been in the ring for 2 minutes.
I agree.
Except he's losing. Yeah, he's losing to the Big Show. So we don't, and I have no problem with Reigns taking the belt, and a lot of people do, but I don't. I think he's, number one, he's a big guy. He's a good-looking guy, good shape. I see what Vince sees in him. I would push him too. But that's not one of those matches where you say, and almost everyone thinks they know the finish to that match already. So we don't know what Lesnar's going to do, but we kind of think that, Reigns is going to be the champion no matter what because they went with this storyline. And then you got, the only other thing to me is exciting about Mania is a Sting against Triple H, and it's probably not the match that I want to see, but I would have had fun with it 12 years ago. And for some reason, I still kind of a mark, for Sting. So, and I don't want to pretend he never was in TNA. So that's the only thing that excites me about Mania.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a little lackluster for me too, and I mean, like, I'm right there, with everyone else. I'm not a big fan of Roman Reigns. If maybe they presented him a little bit different, then maybe I could get behind him. But I just hate the fact that, like, when they decide that, like, they want to shove someone down our throats, and this time it being Roman Reigns. There's so many other people I'd like to see in that position. And if he's going to be the quote-unquote face of the WWE now, I just think there's other people that are more, more deserving and more fitting, to be in that position.
I can't, I don't disagree. I think Daniel Bryan, I think the fans could have made Daniel Bryan a big star, and if it would have been 10 years ago, maybe at least 10 years ago, even that, just that amount ago, if they would have had a response like that for one guy, they, nothing that not that he's the level of Stone Cold, but just take the Stone Cold story. Stone Cold started getting a response from the crowd, blah, blah, blah. What do? Well, we don't push Stone Cold. We're going to hold him back. So none of that they've done for Daniel Bryan, because Daniel doesn't fit in. He doesn't look like Roman Reigns. But that's not what it's about, and that's when it comes to the fans and him. But the only thing that people don't, here's one of the reasons WWE didn't do what they did, and not a lot of people want to know about this or say anything about it, because they're such Daniel Bryan fans, and I am too. I love Daniel Bryan. But when they did do live shows at one point with him where he was on top, you got a Cena show and you got a Daniel Bryan show, they didn't draw as well. So the idea is, hey, this guy's, he can't draw what Cena draws to a house show. So, but who can? That's the thing about it. Cena's got so much kind of, and I know you're going to probably be surprised when you hear me say this, but I'm actually a Cena fan too, because of the money mainly. Is that I would have kept pushing him and doing everything. It wouldn't have mattered if somebody. And that's what happens on TV. You have people want to go to TV and be the cool kids, and boo Cena. But if you go to an arena, I don't know unless it's Flair or Hogan that I've been to see gets a bigger reaction. I mean, it's crazy. I went to a small arena here in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And he blew the roof off. I mean, when Cena comes out, the music starts, and the crowd, he's the hugest babyface ever. But
yeah, I mean, he follows that road that, like, Hulk Hogan and others before him, But I mean, I'm not a John Cena fan. I've never, from day one, just like I'm, disagreeing with this Roman Reigns push. I mean, if you go back, 10 plus years ago, I was saying the same exact thing about John Cena. There's no way this guy should be given this push. I don't think, he's ready, or, and I didn't like him. I've never really liked him, but I did eventually begin to respect his work rate. But it took me many years to get to that point, and then finally I was like, well, the guy works his ass off, and, he's at that point where, he knows the business, he's over with the crowd, and he knows how to work, both sides, because, 50% of the crowd hate him, 50% love him, and, he plays that card well.
And the fun thing, so for example, we're just talking about Daniel Bryan. Let's think about this. Say you was talking about you didn't like the push about Cena, but think about when we started the Cena push. Ben started the Cena push. I wasn't big on him when he started the push, but because there were so many other guys on the roster at that time. But when he started the push, and boom, 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 and it started first year, second year. Here's a kid who was selling shitload of T-shirts. He was, I mean, every kid in the world wanted to be John Cena, and he was over as I don't know what. Okay, and then we fast forward now, and what they do, they push John Cena, and they kept pushing, and they have always. And then we got Daniel Bryan. Now, he's not selling the Cena T-shirts, but he's so over with the crowd, and for some ungodly reason, you know, Daniel Bryan, unless, you know, Vince dies and they totally change everything that they're doing, Daniel Bryan's going to go down in history as almost, right from this point on, almost a caricature of himself, as in the guy that comes out and says, yes, 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 almost as bad as, say, Rob Van Dam saying what he says, or, you know, Hacksaw Duggan, oh, you know, the yes becomes a ho. And I hate it. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's heartbreaking to true fans. And not only that, you know, what marks that are still left in, well, I want to say as marks, whatever that are still left as fans, it breaks their heart too. It's not only guys like me and you who have watched and know how good of a wrestler and how much Daniel Bryan does. And I had a chance of meeting Daniel Bryan at a Wizard World about a year and a half ago. One of the most humble, modest, super nice guys you'll ever meet. And just answered questions, you know, with all honesty that I felt that he was really honest with everyone about. And he knows the fans are so, but he also is the kind of guy, which he said, it's all about having something to do. Now, if you don't, and that opened my eyes with the WWE. So say you're on the roster and you don't have anything to do, that's when it's bad. When you have something to do and he's in the ladder match, then he's happy. So, but, you know, it is. It's a really strange, I can't believe we're sitting here talking about Daniel Bryan and John Cena spinning, but that's what it's about. I mean, that's the wrestling business right now, and there's no, everyone talks about number 2 or number 3 or whatever, they're so far away from the WWE. It's not even, you know, a number 2, you know, it doesn't really matter anymore.
Hey, Brian, don't mean to cut you off.
Hey, thank you for joining us live from STS Studios in St. Louis, Missouri. And that was another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit. A big thank you to Bob McGee at Pro Wrestlers Between the Sheets, PWBTS.com. Locals to Legends, Gene Jackson at www.localstolegends.com. Sean Garmer over at W2Mnet.com. Guys, we're at Comic Book Mark BT on Twitter, at BT Shootin The Shiznit on Instagram. You can send a PayPal. That's right, a PayPal at Brian_Tramel, Tramel, at yahoo.com. All the archives are on our www.stspod.club page. That's right, Cool Kids Wrestling and MMA Talk Facebook group. You can join that and talk about wrestling. If we don't like you, we'll kick you out. There's also a Shootin The Shiznit Facebook page where we actually post all the new episodes. Remember, you can listen to this episode and many more on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, Pop Paradise, and Spreaker. And finally, a shout out to our podcast bros: Suplex City Limits, Creative Control, Who's Right Podcast, P3 Radio. And guys, remember, keep it at 100. Patreon site is only $1. Help my buddy JoJo out there. Only $1. Join us next week for another great episode of Shootin The Shiznit.